The Zephyrian homeworld of Kepler 442b hung like a dying jewel against the black void of space. Once, its crystalline cities had stretched across 3 continents, their spires reaching toward twin suns that painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. Now those same cities lay in ruins, their crystal facades shattered by plasma bombardments that had turned sand to glass and reduced millennia of civilization to smoking craters. Ambassador Thais Ka pressed her trembling claws against the viewport of the last functioning orbital station, watching another transport vessel disappear into hyperspace. Each ship carried thousands of her people, refugees fleeing a war they never wanted, never started, and could never hope to win. Her bioluminescent patches, normally a brilliant azure blue, had faded to the pale gray of exhaustion and despair. "How many ships have we lost today?" she asked without turning around. Commander Zell-Keth, her military advisor and oldest friend, checked his tactical display with the methodical precision that had kept him alive through 40 years of service. 17 transports intercepted. The hegemony's hunter-killer squadrons are systematic in their efficiency. They're not just conquering us, they're exterminating us. The hegemony of Dominion had swept through the outer spiral like a plague of metal and fire. 12 species had already fallen to their relentless advance, not conquered, but completely annihilated. The hegemony didn't believe in prisoners, slaves, or subjugation. They believed in absolute extinction of any race that possessed technology beyond primitive agriculture. Their philosophy was simple. Only one species deserved to inherit the galaxy, and it was them. Thais Ka had seen the recordings from the Altarian genocide. Entire planets stripped of atmosphere, billions of beings reduced to cosmic dust. The hegemony's war machines didn't just kill, they erased entire civilizations from existence, leaving behind sterile worlds ready for their own colonization. "What's the status of our distress beacon?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would bring no comfort. "Broadcasting on all known frequencies for the past 6 months," Zell-Keth replied. "We've received acknowledgement from the Centauri Federation, the Vegan Commonwealth, and even the isolationist Andromedans. They all express sympathy and regret. But no action. No action. They're too distant, too weak, or too afraid. The hegemony's reputation precedes them. No one wants to be next." Thais Ka closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her species' extinction pressing down on her shoulders like a collapsing star. The Zephyrians had been explorers, scientists, artists. They'd mapped nebulae, composed symphonies that could be heard across stellar distances, and developed medical technology that could heal wounds at the cellular level. None of it mattered now. Culture, knowledge, beauty, all of it would die with them. The tactical display chimed with an incoming transmission. Zell-Keth's expression darkened as he read the identifier. "It's the hegemony. Admiral Vex 9 wants to negotiate." Thais Ka turned from the viewport, her decision made. Put him through. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the grotesque form of Admiral Vex 9. The hegemony's biological modifications had long since erased any trace of their original species. Vex 9 was a nightmare fusion of flesh and metal, his skull replaced with a pulsing cybernetic core, his limbs extended with hydraulic enhancers that leaked lubricating fluids. Multiple optical sensors had been grafted where eyes should be, and his mouth was a mechanical grill that translated his thoughts directly into speech. "Ambassador Thais Ka," the Admiral's voice was a synthesized rasp that carried the weight of absolute authority. "Your resistance has been noted and found amusing. I offer you terms." "Speak them," Thais Ka replied, though she suspected any terms would be academic. "Surrender unconditionally. Submit your entire population for processing. I will ensure their deaths are efficient rather than prolonged." "This is more mercy than your species deserves." Zell-Keth's combat claws extended involuntarily, but Thais-Ka raised a hand for silence. And if we refuse? Vex 9's mechanical mouth attempted what might have been a smile. Then we will hunt every last Zephyrian through the cosmos. We will find your hidden colonies, your refugee fleets, your secret research stations. We will make your extinction last for generations until the very concept of your species becomes a cautionary tale whispered among the stars. I see. Thais-Ka's voice remained steady, though her bioluminescent patches flickered with suppressed emotion. Then I have a counter-proposal. This seemed to genuinely surprise the Admiral. His optical sensors whirred as they focused on her. You are in no position to negotiate. We have discovered something in our deep space surveys that will interest you, Thais-Ka continued. A species that matches your technological level, perhaps even exceeds it in certain areas. They call themselves humans, and their homeworld is a place called Earth. Vex 9's mechanical systems hummed as he processed this information. You seek to redirect our attention. A desperate ploy. Not redirect. Warning. These humans, they're not like the other species you've encountered. Their evolutionary path was different. Violent. They spent millennia fighting each other, developing weapons and tactics that would horrify civilized races. When we first made contact with them through long-range communications, they were in the middle of something they called a world war, a planetary-scale conflict involving hundreds of millions of combatants. Primitive savages with nuclear weapons, Vex 9 dismissed. We have encountered such before. They burn brightly and die quickly. That was 200 of their years ago. Since then, they've unified their world and expanded into their local star system. But the concerning part is their culture. They have an entire entertainment industry based on simulating warfare, conflict, and survival scenarios. They call it gaming and fiction, but we believe it represents sophisticated military training disguised as recreation. Zel-Keth caught on to what Thais-Ka was doing and picked up the thread. Our xenopsychologists studied their transmissions. These humans have something they call humanity. Fuck yeah stories. Fictional narratives where their species overcomes impossible odds through sheer determination and tactical brilliance. They seem to genuinely believe they're the apex predator species of the galaxy. Delusional primitives. But there was a note of interest in Vex 9's synthesized voice. Perhaps, or perhaps not. They have a saying, si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Their entire civilization appears to be built around this concept. Even their non-military technology is dual purpose. Their internet is a hardened communications network originally designed to survive nuclear warfare. Their commercial spaceflight industry uses rockets that could easily be converted to delivery systems for weapons of mass destruction. Thais-Ka moved closer to the hologram, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Admiral, what if I told you that these humans have something no other species you've encountered possesses? Speak. They know you're coming. The silence stretched across the communication channel like a held breath. Finally, Vex 9 spoke. Explain. They've been monitoring galactic communications for decades. They know about the hegemony. They know about the extinctions. And instead of fleeing or hiding, they've been preparing. Military preparation, Admiral. Industrial mobilization. They're not just waiting for you, they're anticipating you. This was mostly fiction, but it was plausible fiction. Thais-Ka had indeed made contact with Earth's scientists decades ago, sharing astronomical data and basic scientific principles. The humans had been eager to learn about galactic civilization, and their responses had shown a strategic mindset that both impressed and terrified her. Vex 9's optical sensors whirred as they processed tactical implications. The hegemony had succeeded through overwhelming technological superiority combined with strategic surprise. They struck fast, struck hard, and eliminated organized resistance before it could form. But a species that knew they were coming and had time to prepare. You're attempting to manipulate us into attacking this Earth first, hoping they'll damage us enough for your pathetic resistance to exploit. I'm trying to save both our species from extinction, Thaiska replied with complete honesty. The humans aren't like us, Admiral. They're not civilized. They're survivors, predators. They've spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and better armed than they were. And they've gotten very, very good at it. Their location. Sol System, Orion Arm, approximately 26,000 light-years from Galactic Center. But Admiral... Thaiska paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. When you attack Earth, remember that we warned you. When their ships start hunting yours through the cosmos, remember who told you they were coming, because if there's one thing humans excel at, it's holding grudges. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving Thaiska and Zelketh alone with the soft hum of the orbital station's life support systems. They stood in silence for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "Do you think he'll take the bait?" Zelketh finally asked. "His entire military doctrine is based on eliminating potential threats before they can organize. Yes, he'll go to Earth. The question is whether our warning reaches them in time. And whether they can do what 12 other species could not." Thaiska returned to the viewport, watching the evacuation ships disappear into the star-speckled darkness. Somewhere out there, in a system she'd never visited around a star she could barely see, lived a species that might be their only hope. She just prayed they were as dangerous as she'd claimed. 3 days later, the hegemony's war fleet began its journey toward the Sol system, leaving behind the dying embers of Zephyrian civilization. But before the last orbital station fell silent, one final message pulsed across interstellar space on frequencies that Earth's deep space monitoring stations had been watching for decades. To the humans of Earth, they are coming. Remember that we tried to warn you. Remember that someone believed you might be strong enough to fight back. Do not go gentle into that good night. Make them pay for every star they've stolen, every world they've burned, every species they've erased. Show them what monsters really look like. The message carried with it complete intelligence on hegemony fleet compositions, tactical doctrines, technological capabilities, and most importantly, the location and timeline of their approach. It was everything a military strategist would need to plan a defense against an overwhelming force. It was also everything a predator would need to plan an ambush. As the last Zephyrian transport ship limped away from their ruined homeworld, Thaiska allowed herself one final look back at the planet where her species had evolved from simple mineral feeders into beings capable of contemplating the stars. "Goodbye," she whispered to the broken world below. "May our death serve some purpose." Behind her, Zelketh was already plotting courses to their remaining colonies, preparing to spread word of what was coming. The Zephyrians might be dying, but their final act would be to light a beacon in the darkness, a warning that would reach Earth months before the hegemony's war fleet arrived. Whether humanity would prove to be the monsters their stories claimed they were, remained to be seen. But for the first time since the war began, Thaiska felt something that had almost been forgotten among her people: hope. In the vast emptiness between stars, Admiral Vex 9's war fleet accelerated toward an unremarkable yellow star and the third planet that orbited it. The Admiral's strategic calculations showed a high probability of standard pacification protocols achieving desired extinction parameters within planetary rotational periods numbering fewer than 10. He had no way of knowing that every communication array on Earth had been listening. No way of knowing that humanity's greatest strength had always been the time between learning of a threat and facing it. Time to plan, to prepare, to turn their entire civilization into a weapon, pointed at anything that dared threaten their home. The hegemony was about to discover what 12 billion apex predators could accomplish when they had months to prepare for war. Colonel Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display showing the approaching hegemony fleet, each crimson dot representing enough firepower to sterilize a continent. The United Earth Defense Council had been in continuous session for 3 months since receiving the Zephyrian warning, and the exhaustion showed in every face around the conference table. But beneath that exhaustion burned something far more dangerous, cold, calculating rage. "Fleet composition analysis is complete," reported Admiral Rodriguez from Luna Command. 2,600 vessels organized into 12 attack formations. Each formation contains approximately 200 ships, ranging from Corvette-class hunters to what our xenotech analysts classify as planet killers. "Time to arrival?" asked General Morrison, his weathered hands steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. 14 days, 7 hours approximately. They'll drop out of hyperspace at the edge of our solar system and begin systematic advancement toward Earth. Dr. Elizabeth Hawking, Earth's chief xenobiologist, leaned forward from her position at the far end of the table. Her great-grandfather had been a theoretical physicist who once calculated the odds of humanity surviving contact with hostile aliens. She wondered what he would think of the current situation. "We've finished analyzing the biological samples the Zephyrians included with their intelligence package," she said, her voice steady despite the implications of her findings. "The hegemony aren't just cybernetically enhanced. They've completely replaced their original biology with synthetic alternatives. Pain suppressors, enhanced reflexes, redundant systems. They've essentially turned themselves into living weapons." "Good," Colonel Chen said quietly, and every person in the room turned to look at her. "Pain suppressors mean they can't feel fear. No fear means they'll never break formation, never retreat, never hesitate. It makes them predictable." "How is that good?" asked Dr. Hawking. Chen smiled, and it was the kind of expression that had once made enemy combatants surrender rather than face capture. "Because fear isn't what makes humans dangerous. Hope is. And we've got something they've never encountered before." She gestured to the tactical display, which shifted to show Earth's defensive preparations. What had once been a peaceful solar system had been transformed into the largest fortification in human history. The asteroid belt now bristled with weapons platforms disguised as mining operations. Mars had been converted into a massive weapons manufacturing facility. Luna's far side concealed shipyards that had been operating around the clock for months. "Phase 1 is complete," Chen continued. "We've evacuated all non-essential personnel from the outer system and established fallback positions throughout the inner planets. Jupiter's moons are now automated weapons platforms with enough firepower to crack small asteroids. Saturn's rings have been seeded with kinetic kill vehicles that can't be detected until they're already moving." "And if they break through all of that?" asked a voice from the back of the room. Chen's smile widened. "Then they get to find out why every military strategist in human history has advised against fighting a land war on someone's home territory." Earth itself had been transformed. Every major city now sat beneath energy shields powered by fusion reactors that had been built in underground complexes. The planet's orbital space was crowded with defense platforms, each one designed to look like routine satellites or space debris until activated. But the most significant changes weren't visible from space. Humanity had spent the past 3 months remembering how to be what they'd always been beneath the veneer of civilization: persistence hunters, tool makers, and the most dangerous problem solvers in the known galaxy. Dr. James Park stood up from his position near the display controls. As Earth's leading expert in applied xenoengineering, he'd spent his career studying alien technologies. Now he was about to explain how those technologies could be turned into weapons. "We've reverse-engineered the hegemony's shield frequencies from the data the Zephyrians provided," he said, bringing up a new hologram showing energy wavelength patterns. "Their defensive systems are designed to counter conventional energy weapons and kinetic impacts. They've never encountered anything like what we're about to show them. The hologram shifted to display a sleek missile design, unlike anything in humanity's previous arsenal. We call them trickster warheads. They use adaptive frequency modulators to match hegemony shield signatures, essentially convincing their defenses that our weapons are friendly fire. By the time their systems recognize the deception, the warheads have already passed through their shields. "How many do we have?" Morrison asked. 12,000 ready for deployment with production lines capable of manufacturing another 1,000 per day. But that's not our primary weapon system. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be empty space around Earth's orbit. Then, as sensors adjusted to different frequencies, the space revealed itself to be full of nearly invisible objects, thousands upon thousands of them forming a loose sphere around the planet. "Nano-swarm defensive grid," Dr. Park explained. "Each unit is approximately the size of a grain of rice, powered by ambient solar radiation and equipped with basic AI targeting systems. Individually, they're harmless. Collectively, they form a cloud of 12 million units capable of coordinating attacks on any target within their operational sphere." Admiral Rodriguez whistled softly. "Essentially, we've surrounded Earth with an intelligent minefield that can adapt and react in real time." "That's the defensive perimeter," Chen said. "Our offensive capabilities are more personal." She activated another display showing ship formations that looked unlike anything in standard human naval doctrine. Instead of the traditional large battleships and cruiser formations, Earth's fleet consisted of thousands of small, fast vessels designed around a single strategic principle. Quantity has a quality all its own. Each attack craft carries a crew of 4 and enough firepower to cripple ships 10 times their size, Chen explained. They're designed to be expendable, fast, and absolutely vicious in close combat. The hegemony uses formation fighting with heavy ships providing supporting fire. We're going to swarm them like angry wasps. "What about their technological superiority?" Dr. Hawking asked. "Every species they've defeated had advanced technology. Some of them had weapons that should have been effective against hegemony forces." Chen leaned back in her chair, her expression becoming thoughtful. "That's where things get interesting. We analyzed every battle report the Zephyrians provided. The hegemony wins through overwhelming force applied systematically. They're incredibly efficient, but they're not creative. They use the same tactics, the same formations, the same strategic principles in every engagement. They're following a playbook," Morrison realized. "Exactly. And we've studied that playbook for 3 months. We know how they'll attack, where they'll position their command vessels, how they'll respond to different threats. The problem is, we're not going to give them the kind of fight they're expecting." The tactical display shifted to show battle simulations that had been run thousands of times over the past months. In each scenario, the hegemony fleet encountered resistance that appeared conventional at first. Ships firing energy weapons, kinetic strikes from prepared positions, standard defensive tactics that 12 other species had attempted. But then the simulations showed what would happen when those conventional defenses began to fail. Instead of the expected collapse and surrender, Earth's forces would transition into something the hegemony had never encountered: asymmetric warfare on an interplanetary scale. "Guerrilla tactics," Chen said simply. "Hit-and-run attacks from concealed positions throughout the solar system. Each engagement designed not to win decisively, but to waste their resources and force them to spread their fleet thinner and thinner. Classic insurgency warfare, but applied to space combat." "And when they inevitably break through to Earth orbit?" asked Dr. Hawking. "Then they discover what every invader in human history has learned the hard way," Chen replied. "Conquering territory isn't the same as holding it, and humans get really, really nasty when you threaten their families." The display showed Earth itself, now revealed to be honeycombed with defensive installations that extended deep underground. Every major city had been connected by tunnel systems that could move personnel and supplies undetected. Manufacturing facilities had been dispersed and hardened against orbital bombardment. Most importantly, every civilian population center had been equipped with weapons that could be operated by ordinary citizens. We've distributed small arms sufficient to equip every adult human on the planet, Chen continued. Basic energy weapons, explosives, and most importantly, detailed instructions on hegemony weaknesses and tactical vulnerabilities. If they want to occupy Earth, they'll have to fight 12 billion people who know exactly where to aim to disable their cybernetic systems. Dr. Park stood again, his expression grim. There's one more thing. Something we haven't mentioned to anyone outside this room. The display shifted to show molecular diagrams that looked more like biological structures than technology. We've weaponized human diseases. The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable. Finally, Admiral Rodriguez spoke. Explain. The hegemony's cybernetic enhancements require biological components to interface with their synthetic systems. We've engineered retroviruses that specifically target those interfaces. The diseases are harmless to unmodified biology, but they cause cascading failures in cybernetic systems. You've created a plague that only affects the hegemony, Morrison said quietly. More than that, Dr. Park replied, we've created a plague that turns their technological advantages against them. The more enhanced they are, the faster and more completely the virus affects their systems. It spreads through their shared communication networks, their synchronized tactical systems, even their standardized life support protocols. Dr. Hawking leaned forward, her expression troubled. The ethical implications are irrelevant, Chen interrupted. They've committed genocide against 12 species. They're coming to commit genocide against us. They've forfeited any right to ethical consideration. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just preparing to defend itself, it was preparing to fight the kind of war that would either end with Earth's survival or the hegemony's complete destruction. There's something else, Chen said quietly. Something the Zephyrians mentioned that we've been thinking about. She brought up a star chart showing the hegemony's path of conquest across the galaxy. Look at the pattern. They don't just defeat species, they erase them completely. No prisoners, no slaves, no subjugation, total extinction every time. Your point? Asked Morrison. Why? If you're building a galactic empire, why not use conquered species as labor? Why not exploit their technologies, their knowledge, their resources? Why go through the effort of complete genocide when it's tactically inefficient? The question hung in the air like a challenge waiting to be answered. Dr. Hawking was the first to understand. They're afraid, Chen nodded. They're afraid of exactly what we're about to do to them. They commit genocide because they know that any species left alive will eventually find a way to fight back. They've built their entire civilization around the assumption that overwhelming force applied quickly enough can prevent any effective resistance. But they've never fought humans, Admiral Rodriguez observed. No. They've never fought a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and better armed. They've never fought a species that considers impossible odds to be a challenge rather than a surrender condition. Chen stood up, her posture carrying the authority of someone who had spent a lifetime preparing for exactly this kind of fight. In 12 days, the hegemony is going to discover what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. They're about to learn why every successful military doctrine in human history has emphasized one fundamental principle: know your enemy. And they don't know us at all, Morrison said with grim satisfaction. The tactical display shifted one final time, showing real-time positions of human forces throughout the solar system. Ships hiding in asteroid fields, weapons platforms disguised as space debris, mobile units that could strike from any direction without warning. It was a defensive network that looked chaotic and disorganized to anyone familiar with conventional military doctrine. To Colonel Chen, it looked like the largest trap in human history. 12 days, she said to the assembled commanders. 12 days to finalize preparations for a war that will determine whether humanity survives or joins 12 other species in extinction. But I want everyone in this room to remember something. She gestured toward the star chart, showing the hegemony's previous conquests. Every species they've defeated fought them the same way, with honor, with conventional tactics, with the assumption that superior technology would ultimately prevail. Every single one of them fought fair. Chen's smile returned, and this time it carried the promise of violence that had made humanity the apex predator of Earth for millennia. We're not going to fight fair. We're going to fight to win. Outside the conference room windows, Earth continued its ancient rotation, its blue and green surface unmarred by the preparations hidden beneath clouds and continents. In orbital shipyards, the final attack craft rolled off assembly lines, crewed by volunteers who understood they were probably flying to their deaths. On Luna, weapons that had never been tested in combat received their final calibrations. Throughout the solar system, 12 billion humans continued the ordinary business of life while preparing for the most extraordinary war in galactic history. The hegemony was coming to Earth expecting another systematic conquest, another efficient genocide, another routine addition to their empire of empty worlds. They were about to discover that Earth's monsters had been waiting for them. Admiral Vex 9 experienced what his cybernetic consciousness classified as satisfaction as his war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 2,600 vessels arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the dark metal that had become synonymous with hegemony dominance across the galaxy. His tactical displays showed the primitive system laid out before him like a three-dimensional map, a yellow star with 9 planets, asteroid belts rich in minerals, and the third world that would soon join the growing list of sterilized colonies. Initial scans complete, reported his tactical coordinator, designation Crix 7. Like all hegemony officers, Crix 7 had replaced emotion with efficiency, personality with protocol. Defensive installations detected throughout the system, energy signatures consistent with standard Type 2 civilization parameters. Resistance level? Vex 9 asked, though he already knew the answer. 12 species had provided identical readings before their extinction. Minimal. Approximately 4,000 vessels of various classes, concentrated primarily around the third planet. Weapons technology appears to be kinetic and directed energy-based. No evidence of exotic physics or temporal manipulation capabilities. Vex 9's optical sensors focused on the tactical display showing Earth's defensive formations. The human fleet looked exactly like what he'd encountered before, ships arranged in protective formations around their homeworld, space-based weapons platforms providing supporting fire, the classic defensive posture of a species that had never fought a real war. Standard pacification protocol, he ordered. Outer system sweep, eliminate defensive installations, converge on primary target. Timeline for total sterilization? Estimated completion in 72 hours, Crix 7 responded with mechanical precision. The hegemony fleet began its advance with the inexorable certainty of a natural disaster. The outer formations moved to eliminate Jupiter's moons, which showed signs of weapons emplacements. The middle formations targeted the asteroid belt installations. The core battle groups maintained course directly toward Earth, their planet-killer weapons charging for the systematic bombardment that would reduce humanity to cosmic dust. Admiral Vex 9 had performed this same operation against 12 other species. He anticipated no variations in the tactical sequence. That confidence lasted exactly 17 minutes. The first sign that something was wrong came when the outer formations reached Jupiter's orbital space. Instead of the expected resistance from fortified moon bases, they encountered what appeared to be empty space. Sensors showed no defensive installations, no weapons platforms, no targets worthy of engagement. Then Jupiter's moons opened fire. The weapons that emerged from seemingly barren surfaces weren't the standard energy cannons or missile batteries that hegemony tactical doctrine had prepared them to face. Instead, streams of projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed tore through the leading formations with devastating precision. Each projectile was tiny, barely larger than a grain of sand, but accelerated to velocities that made them more destructive than conventional warheads. "Status report," Vex 9 demanded as his tactical display lit up with damage indicators. "Outer Formation Delta has sustained 30% casualties," Crick 7 reported, his synthesized voice carrying no trace of the concern that would have colored an organic being's response. "Weapons appear to be kinetic kill vehicles using electromagnetic acceleration. Defensive screens are proving insufficient against high-velocity impacts." More concerning than the casualties was the tactical implication. The humans had concealed their weapons so effectively that hegemony sensors had detected nothing until the attack began. This suggested a level of strategic sophistication that hadn't appeared in any previous conquest. "Adjust formation, increase distance between vessels, and implement randomized evasion patterns," Vex 9 ordered. It was the first time in 12 campaigns that he'd been forced to modify standard approach protocols. The fleet's adjustment proved to be exactly what Earth's defenders had anticipated. As hegemony formations spread out to minimize losses from concentrated fire, they triggered the second phase of humanity's defensive strategy. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt, weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining operations suddenly came online. But instead of targeting the obvious command vessels or attempting to engage the largest ships, they fired what appeared to be standard kinetic rounds at seemingly random targets throughout the formation. Admiral Vex 9 watched with growing confusion as human weapons struck empty space, asteroids, and debris fields rather than hegemony vessels. The targeting seemed completely ineffective, almost deliberately wasteful. Then the rounds detonated. Each kinetic projectile had been designed to fragment into millions of smaller pieces upon impact with any solid object. Within minutes, the asteroid belt became an expanding cloud of high-velocity debris moving in carefully calculated trajectories. The hegemony fleet found itself flying through a three-dimensional minefield where every piece of space dust had become a potential weapon. "Formation cohesion compromised," Crick 7 reported as more ships reported damage from impacts too small to detect until they struck. "Recommend consolidated advance on single vector." "Negative. Maintain current approach. Human tactics are desperate but ultimately ineffective against superior numbers." Admiral Vex 9 was correct in one sense. The human attacks weren't causing enough damage to stop his fleet, but they were accomplishing something far more important. They were forcing the hegemony to fight the kind of war they'd never trained for. As the fleet advanced past Mars, the true scope of human preparation became apparent. What had appeared to be standard orbital installations around the Red Planet were revealed to be launch platforms for an entirely new type of weapon system. Thousands of small craft, each barely larger than a fighter, separated from their moorings and began accelerating toward the hegemony formation. "Analysis of approaching craft," Vex 9 ordered. "Minimal armor, limited weapon systems, crew of approximately 4 individuals each," Crick 7 responded after a moment of scanning. "Insignificant threat to primary vessels." But as the human attack craft closed distance, their true purpose became clear. Instead of engaging in traditional space combat, they used their superior numbers and maneuverability to swarm individual hegemony vessels like insects, attacking much larger predators. Their weapons weren't designed to destroy enemy ships, they were designed to disable specific systems. Precision strikes took out sensor arrays, communication relays, and maneuvering thrusters. Individual human craft would ram into weapon emplacements, their pilots sacrificing themselves to eliminate single-gun turrets on ships carrying hundreds of such weapons. It was tactically insane by any conventional standard, but devastatingly effective in practice. They're not trying to destroy our ships, Vex 9 realized. They're trying to blind and cripple them. As hegemony vessels found their systems degraded by countless small attacks, their formation cohesion began to break down. Ships that couldn't communicate effectively with their neighbors started making independent decisions. Vessels with damaged sensors began firing at targets their commanders couldn't properly identify. Admiral Vex 9 watched his perfectly coordinated fleet slowly dissolve into individual units struggling with equipment failures and communication breakdowns. It was still a superior force. Damaged hegemony vessels retained more firepower than anything in the human arsenal, but they were no longer fighting as the unified weapon that had conquered 12 worlds. "Sir," Crick 7's voice carried a note of something that might have been confusion in an organic being. "We're receiving a communication from the human fleet." "Display it." The holographic projector activated, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She was sitting in what looked like a combat command center, and behind her, other humans worked at stations displaying tactical information. "Admiral Vex 9, the human said, and her voice carried none of the fear or desperation that had characterized communications from previous species facing extinction. "I'm Colonel Sarah Chen, Commanding Officer of Earth's Combined Defense Forces. I wanted to speak with you before we proceed to the next phase of this engagement." "You seek to negotiate surrender terms," Vex 9 stated. It was the only logical reason for communication at this point. Colonel Chen smiled, and the expression was unlike anything Vex 9 had seen in his previous conquests. It wasn't the smile of someone facing death. It was the smile of someone who had just sprung a carefully planned trap. "Actually, I wanted to thank you." "Explain." "You've just provided us with the field test data we needed to confirm our weapons systems are working as designed. Your fleet's response to our defensive measures has been exactly what our tactical simulations predicted. It's been quite educational." Vex 9's optical sensors focused on the human commander. "You speak as if this engagement favors your forces." "Doesn't it?" Chen gestured to something outside the projection field, and her display changed to show a tactical overview of the battle from the human perspective. What Vex 9 saw caused his cybernetic systems to run immediate verification checks. According to human sensor data, his fleet had been reduced from 2,600 vessels to fewer than 1,800 operational units. More importantly, those remaining units were scattered across a volume of space that made coordinated tactics virtually impossible. "You've lost nearly a third of your fleet," Chen observed. "And you haven't even reached Earth's orbital space yet. At current attrition rates, you'll have fewer than 1,000 ships by the time you're in position to begin your planetary bombardment." "Our remaining forces are still sufficient to complete planetary sterilization," Vex 9 replied, though his tactical computers were already revising their probability assessments. "Oh, I'm sure they are. But here's the thing about humans that you might not have learned from studying other species. We don't just prepare for the war we're fighting. We prepare for the war that comes after." Chen's expression became serious, and when she spoke again, her words carried the weight of absolute conviction. "You see, Admiral, we've been studying your previous campaigns very carefully. We know that the hegemony doesn't just defeat species, you erase them completely. No survivors, no prisoners, no witnesses. Total extinction every time." "Your point?" "Our point is that we've had months to prepare for the very real possibility that Earth's defenses might fail, so we've made some preparations of our own." The tactical display shifted to show the outer edge of the solar system, where new contacts were appearing on sensors. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Not human ships, but vessels from a dozen different species that Vex 9 recognized as extinct civilizations. You see, Admiral, it turns out we're not the first species to receive a warning about your approach. Over the past few months, we've been contacted by survivors, refugees who escaped your previous complete genocides. Representatives from every species you thought you'd eliminated. Vex 9's cybernetic systems processed this information with growing alarm. If survivors existed from previous campaigns, if those survivors had access to hegemony tactical data and had been planning coordinated resistance, they've been waiting, Chen continued. Waiting for someone strong enough to give the hegemony a real fight, waiting for a chance to make you pay for what you've done to their worlds, their families, their entire civilizations. The sensor display showed the approaching fleet in greater detail. Ships from 12 different species, each one carrying weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter hegemony advantages. It wasn't just a rescue fleet, it was a revenge fleet. Assembled by every survivor of every genocide Admiral Vex 9 had personally overseen. The interesting thing about humans, Chen said, her smile returning, is that we're really good at making friends with people who share our enemies. Admiral Vex 9 ran rapid calculations on the tactical situation. His damaged fleet, scattered across the solar system and operating with degraded coordination, was about to face a combined force of species that knew hegemony weaknesses better than the hegemony knew them themselves. For the first time in his enhanced existence, Admiral Vex 9 experienced something his cybernetic consciousness couldn't classify, the organic emotion his species had discarded centuries ago. Fear. But here's the best part, Colonel Chen said. And now her voice carried the promise of violence that had made humanity the apex predator of their homeworld. Even if you somehow manage to defeat our combined forces, even if you glass Earth and eliminate every human in the solar system, you're still going to lose. Explain. Chen's expression became positively predatory. Because we've already sent ships to every inhabited system in this galaxy. Ships carrying detailed intelligence on hegemony tactics, technologies, and weaknesses. Ships carrying weapons designed specifically to counter your advantages. Ships carrying the message that the hegemony can be defeated. The implication hit Admiral Vex 9's tactical processors like a cascade failure. If humanity had indeed disseminated anti-hegemony intelligence to every spacefaring species in the galaxy, if they had turned their defeat into a rallying cry for coordinated resistance, every species you encounter from now on will know exactly how to hurt you, Chen continued. Every colony you attack will be prepared for your tactics. Every world you attempt to conquer will have weapons designed to kill your ships and viruses designed to corrupt your cybernetics. She leaned forward, and her smile disappeared entirely. You came here to commit genocide against humanity. Instead, you've just guaranteed the genocide of the hegemony. The communication channel closed, leaving Admiral Vex 9 alone with his tactical displays and the growing realization that he had led his fleet into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. Around him, the hegemony war machine that had crushed 12 civilizations found itself surrounded by the combined fury of every species they had tried to eliminate, led by the one species in the galaxy that had spent its entire evolutionary history learning how to kill predators larger than themselves. As the first salvos from the approaching revenge fleet began to light up the darkness between stars, Admiral Vex 9 understood with perfect cybernetic clarity that he had made the one mistake that no military commander can survive. He had underestimated his enemy. Earth's monsters had indeed answered the plea for mercy that had echoed across the galaxy. But they hadn't come to show mercy. They had come to show the universe what justice looked like when delivered by the most dangerous species ever to look up at the stars and decide they belonged among them. The hegemony's reign of terror was about to end exactly where it had begun, in the cold darkness between worlds, where predators learned the hardest lesson of all. There's always something bigger, meaner, and hungrier waiting in the dark, and humanity had just introduced them to it.